Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Ronu Spirit podcast, where you follow my learning journey as I explore potential ways to empower African nations, address the legacies of colonization, and enhance the global respect for Black and African people. My name is Hamid, and unfortunately, today's episode, we don't have Dr. Sumaira Fauha joining us, but my guest is a very good friend of mine, a mentor, Mr. Owen Pringle. Owen is of Jamaican descent, currently a partner of a leadership consultancy called Leaders Quest and a trustee of the Charities Aid Foundation. Is a self-described restless provocateur and investigator of change. Is interested in how technology changes us, the way we act, react, live, love, and learn. He's also a business growth coach, a mentor for Social Enterprise Accelerator, and a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. So welcome to the podcast, Owen.
Thank you, Hamid, and thank you for such an illustrious and glorious intro. I'm always a little taken aback by the bio that you write for yourself. When you hear it read back to you, it's almost as if, someone's speaking about a third person. It's in no way would I describe myself those terms. I get those things, but yeah, it seems kind of alien almost.
Yeah, you've actually done a lot, which is crazy because I don't even know where to start. Obviously, this podcast is about empowering Africans. I do want to get to that, especially talking about technology and education and how it affects the continent. But before we get there, just if we can touch on a little bit of all the stuff that you've done, because you're all over the place. And I think that links to when you described yourself as a restless provocateur and investigator of change. So tell me a little bit about what that means and how you got into your work. What does it mean to be a restless provocateur and investigator of change?
I mean, I think the restlessness goes to the heart of my career path, for want of a better term, in a respect. Just reading right back. So many years ago, when I entered the work field, I chose not to go to university. There was a specific reason behind that. At the time, early 90s, there was quite significant growth taking place. There was the beginnings of the internet, the World Wide Web had been created a few years before that. I had been a journalist since the age of 14, just writing free of charge for a local music publication. When I got to the age of 18, I had an opportunity to either become a music editor of this local publication, which was based in Manchester, went out to Manchester and Liverpool, had a pretty good readership. And I was, known as a writer because, as I said, I've been writing since 14. So to become a music editor or to go to university. And that restlessness kicked in at that point. I remember very, very clearly, my mother, bless her, said to me, "You're going to regret this decision," as in you're going to regret not going to university.
I see.
That resonated with me and it echoes to this day. She's still with us, but her words echo in my ear to this day. I was very keen to make sure that I made a success out of what I did. So that restlessness kicked in there and it hasn't really left me. The provocateur element has been really linked to the idea of trying to get anyone I work with to think differently about the status quo. We see things, coming at us day in, day out. The rate of change is increasing. The rapidity of change is increasing. Things are never the same. We're in a constant state of flux. Now, I think that is an opportunity to begin to think about how that change will not only impact us as individuals, but also the organizations that we work with, the systems that we've become used to, the areas that we feel comfortable within that will inevitably go through change themselves. And what that then means for us, how do we lean into that change? How do we embrace that? So the provocateur element for me has been about trying to ask those difficult questions, both of myself and to the organizations that I work with and for, in order to get them to think about change differently. And in many respects, technology has been a red thread throughout my career. So again, starting off within the early 90s, kicking off in ostensibly a startup, a few journalists, me included, got together, established a series of online magazines. For that, we derived revenues from advertising. It wasn't the case. But what was interesting was that there were many organizations who were keen to dabble in this newfangled thing called the World Wide Web. So they come to us and say, look, how do we engage with audiences through this new medium? So we would use the content that we created as a mechanism to demonstrate what was possible in terms of the creation of content through this channel to reach new audiences. And that was really the building block for everything else I've done since, which I'll go into in a little bit more detail. But I'll stop there just in case you've got any questions on that.
I do have a number of questions because I wanted to clarify it and make it easy for the audience to remember. So you didn't go to university at 18. Instead, you chose to be a music editor. And then I think you worked in the magazine journalist sector for a while. And then somehow now your journey has ended up in you being a leadership consultant where you help organizations think differently. And how did you go from being a journalist to that? And how did technology, because you were working with technology from the very early stages when internet first became a thing, you were using that in your journalism. How did that lead you into leadership consultancy, and where does the technology come into play for that?
After the startup, I went to work for ITN in a startup role, really, what was called the new media division of the television news channel.
ITN.
ITN, yeah.
Is that like an old ITV?
ITN is called Independent Television News, and they produce news at 10. They produce Channel 4 News. They produce news programs for television channels and radio channels. They've been going for quite some time. They are a really august organization that has a deep reservoir of capabilities and talent and history in the broadcast television sector. And then I went to Sky, which, as we all know, is the Rupert Murdoch owned, or was owned by Rupert Murdoch at the time, broadcast operation. After that, South Bank Center. After that, Amnesty International, and so on.
What were you doing in all these different places?
I think they sound very different on the face of it. But the thing that links all of the roles that I've had and all of the organizations that I've had to be in is the idea of storytelling. Now, storytelling is one of those terms that is so often used now that it is almost lost its currency. But what I mean by that is the ability to contextualize or recontextualize ideas in a completely different way. So to take an idea and to reframe that in a sense that will allow somebody who perhaps has not come into contact with that idea to see it in a context that they understand and recognize. Journalism is all about that.
Yeah.
It's about taking something that somebody knows nothing about and then portraying it in a way that makes sense to them, making it a human interest story for that individual. Arts and culture is fundamentally about that. Arts is about taking ideas, contextualizing them, representing them.
You went from journalism to working in the arts to working in broadcast, which is like, you're right, they do sound like very different roles, but you're saying the theme within all of them was that it was some sort of storytelling. Storytelling was at the center of what you were doing.
All about storytelling and contextualization. And again, whether that story is about looking at the outside world and saying, how's that going to impact the way we work or what we do, or whether that contextualization is ultimately about how do we take this story that nobody out there knows very much about and tell it in a way that makes people feel that actually it's relatable. NGOs do that every single day of their working lives. Broadcast organizations do that. Arts and culture does that. Journalism does that. You have a thread of storytelling for all of those roles. So that's what I've done throughout the whole of my career.